Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight features the case of somebody known as an angel of death. Tonight, Michael Joseph Swango. We will dive into that case. But before we start, let's just give everybody a second to trickle in. Hi, Chris, James. Hi, Robert. How are you? Hey, Kane. Welcome. Okay, so Michael Joseph Swango. Let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Michael Swango was born October 21st, 1954, and was raised in Quincy, Illinois. He rated as a genius in high school and tested with an IQ of 160. Michael graduated first in his class and was named High School Student of the Year in 1972. He was also a member of the Quincy Notre Dame Band and played clarinet. Michael served in the Marine Corps and received an honorable discharge in 1980. He then attended Quincy College, known now as Quincy University, and later Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, SIU. So far, so good. However, the good times did not last. Michael's troubles were first noticed during his time at SIU. He was known as lazy and preferred to work as an ambulance attendant rather than focus on his schoolwork at all. He had a noticeable fascination of patients who were dying. No one noticed at the time, but many patients that Michael was assigned to do checkups ended up, quote, coding, end quote, or suffered life-threatening emergencies. At least 5 of them died. Michael's lack of studying approach caught up with him only 1 month before he was due to graduate, when he was caught faking checkups during his I'm totally going to butcher this word, y'all. I can't even say it, obstetrics. I don't know. In gynecology rotation. The school let him graduate a year after the rest of his class on the condition that he repeat the OBGYN rotation and complete several assignments in other specialties. While I recover from that horrible pronunciation, welcome everybody else who's popping in. Let's see. Hey, Corey, Paul, thank you for announcing where you are too. A simple hello would have been just fine. Hey, Linda Carroll, Tony, Capone, Johnny C, Firefly. Let's see. Okay. So Michael got a surgical internship at Ohio State University Medical Center in 1983. To follow was a residency in neurosurgery. While he worked at the Rhodes Hall wing, nurses began noticing that otherwise healthy patients began dying mysteriously with alarming frequency. Each time, Michael was the floor intern. On one occasion, a nurse caught him injecting some, quote, medicine, end quote, into a patient who later became strangely ill. The nurse reported their concerns to administrators, but were met with accusations of paranoia. So Michael was cleared by an investigation in 1984. In July of 1984, Michael began working as an emergency medical technician in Quincy with the Adams County Ambulance Corps. Soon, many of the paramedics on staff began noticing that whenever Michael prepared the coffee or brought any food in, several of them would become violently ill. His coworkers decided to check out Michael's duffel bag that he always carried to work. When he left on a call, they opened his locker and retrieved the bag. Inside, they found a box of taro ant poison. So they decided to set a trap. The men purposefully left a freshly brewed pot of iced tea on the counter when they knew Michael would be alone. When they returned, after Michael had gone out, they poured the tea into another container and washed out the pot. They then brought the liquid to the local coroner and sent it to the nearest FBI lab for testing. Results indicated traces of toxin. So Michael, in October 1984, was arrested by the Quincy Police Department, and they found arsenic and other poisons in his possession. On August 23, 1985, Michael was convicted of aggravated battery for poisoning his coworkers. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, this case might sound familiar to you specifically for that one thing. I know in discussing this case with other people when they were like, which case is coming up, no one seemed to recognize the case. But then when I said a fellow doctor and somebody who was part of first responders poisoning their coworkers, that's the piece that everybody seemed to be like, oh, I remember something about that case. So if that case sounds familiar for this instance, that would probably be the thing that most people remember from this one case. But unfortunately, it's going to get a lot worse. But we got some new people in here. Thank you. Thank you. You got to love friends who come in and the first thing they say is, hey, let me correct you. Thank you. Yeah, I knew I totally butchered that. It's all good. Thank you. Yes, well, stay tuned because it gets a lot worse. All right. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay. All right. So in 1989, Michael was released from prison. He found work as a counselor at the State Career Development Center in Newport News, Virginia. He was let go after being caught working on a scrapbook of disasters on work time. I love a good scrapbook, don't get me wrong, but do it off company time. Some people never learn. Michael then found a job as a laboratory technician for ATI Coal in Newport News, Virginia. While he worked there, several employees got unexplainably sick with persistent and increasing stomach pains. He was employed until 1991, when he resigned his position to seek out a new position as, you guessed it, a doctor. Around this time, Michael met Kristen Kinney, a nurse at Riverside Hospital. They started dating and planned to marry once they got settled. In 1991, Michael legally changed his name to Daniel J. Adams and tried to apply for residency at Ohio Valley Medical Center in Wheeling, West Virginia. In July 1992, he began working at Sanford USD Medical Center in Sioux Falls. In both cases, he forged several legal documents that he used to reestablish himself as a physician and respected member of society. This included falsifying his criminal record. So I just have to take a side note and point out to you guys, as you can see, I mean, times have changed quite a bit since the early 90s. But in researching this case, there seem to be so many opportunities where and I don't work in the hospital field, so I don't have any expertise in that. But it seems there wasn't a lot of checking in regards to Michael's past employment, places where he worked, where he was let go, or so on, where people were suspected of getting sick. I don't know what can and can be said in regards to that when someone's looking for a job, because again, working in a hospital is not my expertise. But there just seemed to be missed opportunity after missed opportunity after missed opportunity again with Michael Swango. And it's very frustrating because as this case goes on, it's just one of those things where had he been caught here, X amount of people would probably still be alive today, and so on and so forth. So it makes this case very, very frustrating. But unfortunately, Angels of Death, this is not a one-time thing, a one-time person who does this. Unfortunately, it has that name because it's more common than we would like. But yeah, because we think about it, when you're in your most vulnerable state, where do you go? You go to the doctor, or you're so sick you go to the hospital thinking you're there to get better, not that there's somebody preying on innocent people who ultimately, enjoy killing their patients. But we'll get into more of that. Kane says that there have been a few doctors and nurses like this. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is not, like I said, this is not a one-off case. There are so many more. And several of them are on the list to cover on Danny After Dark future episodes. But yeah, this one seems to be one of the more well-known ones. So I wanted to tackle this one first. But Yeah, unfortunately, this is not a one-off. Hi, Mick. Let's see. Liz said I stumbled over that one all the time. Okay, well, it's good to know I'm not the only one mispronouncing stuff. Dr. Kevorkian. Yeah, there's, that's a tough one. Let's revisit him on True Crime and Chill, not on this, because yeah, I have stories about Dr. Kevorkian. But let's get back to Dr. Michael Swango, shall we? In October 1992, Michael attempted to join the American Medical Association, AMA, but the AMA, thankfully, finally, did a little bit more of a thorough background check than the medical center, and they found out about the poisoning conviction. That Thanksgiving Day, the Discovery Channel aired an episode of Justice Files that included a segment on Michael, so Michael was fired from Sanford. Well, Kristen, she broke up with Michael and moved back to Virginia, as at this time she had been suffering from violent migraines. However, after she moved out and moved away, the headaches just suddenly stopped. Michael found a new job in a psychiatric residency program at the State University of New York at Stony Brook School of Medicine. Stony Brook School of Medicine, I have to say, being in the psychology field, is such a popular referenced school. So if that name means nothing to any of you guys, it's very, very common and well known in the psychology field. So I just wanted to point that out for my psychology nerds, just like myself. Y'all know Stony Brook School of Medicine. So anyway, his first rotation was at the internal medicine department at the VA Medical Center in Newport. Northport, New York. Michael's patients, wouldn't you guess it, began dying for no reason. 4 months later, Michael's ex, Kristen, committed suicide. Her mother, Sharon Cooper, got in touch with a friend of Kristen's who was a nurse at Sanford. Under intense questioning from the head of Stony Brook Psychiatry Department, Michael admitted that he had lied about his poisoning conviction in Illinois and was immediately fired. Since this incident took place at a VA facility, federal authorities became involved. Michael left until mid-1994, when the FBI now found out he was living in Atlanta. He was working as a chemist at a computer equipment company's wastewater facility. The FBI alerted the company, and Michael was fired for lying on his job application. The FBI obtained a warrant charging Michael Swango with using fraudulent credentials to gain entry to a VA hospital. However, by now, Michael had fled not just to a different state, he fled the country. But before we get into his overseas antics, a few of you guys just popped in, so I just wanted to make sure I said hello. Hello, Manson Archives. Hi, Troy. Good to see you. Okay. All right. So yeah, Michael fled the country. In November 1994, he went to Zimbabwe and got a job at a hospital based on, you guessed it, forged documents. His patients began to die mysteriously. It took over a year, however, for the poisonings to be traced to him, and he was arrested in Zimbabwe. He was charged with poisonings and retained prominent lawyer David Coulthard, but he escaped from Zimbabwe before his trial date, and he hid out in Namibia. A year and a half later, in March 1997, he applied for a job in Saudi Arabia using, you guessed it, a false resume. While all of this was happening, the VA criminal investigator consulted with a forensic psychiatrist to help him with the case. Because of her considerable clinical expertise, she was able to review documents and evidence and give a psychological profile of Dr. Michael Swango, along with her assessment of why he had committed such horrendous crimes. This and other evidence was finally enough for Immigration and Naturalization Services to arrest Michael in June 1997 while he was stopped over at Chicago O'Hare International Airport on his way to Saudi Arabia. Faced with a ton of hard evidence, Michael pleaded guilty to defrauding the government in March 1998. In July of 1998, he was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. Yes, just 3.5 years. During this time, the government looked into Michael's alleged past crimes. As part of that investigation, prosecutors exhumed the bodies of 3 of his patients, and they found poisonous chemicals in all of them. On July 11th, 2000, less than a week before he was due to be released from prison on the fraud charge, federal prosecutors filed a criminal complaint charging Michael with 3 counts of murder, 1 count of assault, and 1 count each of false statements, mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. At the same time, Zambian authorities charged him with poisoning 7 patients, 5 of whom had died. Michael was formally indicted July 17, 2000, and pleaded not guilty. However, September 6, 2000, he then changed his plea to guilty to murder and fraud charges. Had he not done so, he faced the possibility of the death penalty. So clearly, he was just trying to save his own ass because he had no intention of getting the death penalty. And I think he realized with all of the hard evidence against him, he didn't really stand a chance. There's only so much he can lie his way out of this, but he's come too far now that that's not going to happen. Hi, Fiddle. Good to see you. Let's see. Why did she commit suicide? Kristen. I read mixed reports as to why she committed suicide. So I didn't put that in the notes because I didn't want to give false information if I stated the wrong narrative. There was just too many conflicting reports and I don't know for sure. So that's something you could certainly look at and go down that rabbit hole. The overwhelming amount of what I saw was a mix of the when it came out who Michael was, but then also like the medical aspect that he'd been poisoning her for so long. So, but I don't know. So I don't have a clear answer on that. The research was kind of all over the place, but that seemed to be the more prominent two that I found. Hi, Royce. Good to see you, hun. Okay, so let's see. Where did we leave off? Yes, Michael, who originally pleaded not guilty, changed his plea to guilty to avoid the death penalty. At his sentencing hearing, prosecutors read lurid passages from Michael's notebook describing the joy he felt during his crimes. He loved the, quote, sweet, husky, close smell of indoor homicide, end quote. He claimed that these murders were, quote, the only way I have of reminding myself that I'm still alive, end quote. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms. It is estimated that Michael is responsible for the deaths of 30 to 60 people. That is the case of Michael Swango, also known as an angel of death. So, what are you guys' thoughts, comments, questions on this case? It's scary when there are honestly, and I'll just speak for myself, when there are cases like this, it is genuinely scary because these are people that take a Hippocratic oath to do what is in the best interest of their patients and to save patients, to save their lives. When people come to them when they're sick, when they're in their most vulnerable health position, and for somebody to purposefully take advantage of them and poison them for their own satisfaction, it's absolutely scary. And to think again, if you were here the whole time for this case, or if you missed any, definitely go back and listen so you're caught up. But where there was time after time after time where his coworkers would kind of start to think something, report it, nothing would really happen, or he would get let go or leave on his own and then just go to the next place. And there didn't seem to be a lot of follow-up in between the different hospitals, companies, agencies, so on and so forth. So the behavior that Michael was doing and the actions he was doing just kept happening. And that's why it is estimated he's responsible for the deaths of 30 to 60 people. That is outrageous. And what did he get sentenced for? The death of 3. 3. That is such injustice. But unfortunately, that is what happens with a lot of cases like this, because think about it. A lot of the times, these 3 patients had to be exhumed, and a lot of family members might not want to be re-traumatized with that, or they might think that their loved one died of a natural cause or whatever the case was because of the type of poisoning. So then to be told your loved one might have been murdered by this doctor, imagine the emotions that brings a family to. I can't even comprehend. Let's see. Absolutely, Royce. Absolutely. That is so well said. Let's see. What was he using arsenic? There was the research. What I got was when he was poisoning his coworkers, he was using taro ant poison. And there was the Quincy Police Department, when they arrested him in 1984, they did find arsenic and other poisons in his possession. So arsenic was one of the poisons he was using. He was using multiple. How did this guy not get recruited by CIA? I mean, Capone, no kidding. Yeah, that's one way to word it. Yeah. Hi, Paul. Good to see you. Mr. Beckham must be lost if he's here. Kane, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no words, because, again, this is not just a one-off case. There are so many other well-known angels of death. Some men, some women. It's all across the board, and different people of different ages that are committing these crimes. So it's not just a United States thing either. It is also in other countries. I'll be covering those cases. Another more notable one is Dr. Harold Shipman. He's also an angel of death as well, or Dr. Harold Shipman. That's a whole case in itself, which we will get into as well. But it absolutely makes it terrifying. It really does. Well said, Firefly. Sounds like he was hired without reference checks. HR dropped the. Fiddle to. That just puts it mildly. But you'd like to think, there are jobs, around, not just in the United States, but in other countries too, where, sometimes are people hired without proper reference checks. It happens. It absolutely happens. But to think in the medical profession that that's not happening or was not happening blows my mind, because look at this. Look at this trail. How many people could have been saved and not murdered had the 2 jobs before that, or the one before that, or the one before that, done their due diligence and exposed him for what he was. But he was always, I hate to say someone like that was one step ahead, but he really was. And even faking credentials, again, were those not looked into? There was so much fraud that he was doing, and it wasn't caught until it started to become suspicious, and then it just kind of snowballed after that. But for so long. And his fiance, again, he was poisoning his girlfriend. And then she moved out, and suddenly the headache stopped. No one was safe with him. No one. Maybe they couldn't prove it at first. Yeah, when I was researching Harold Shipman, they made, and I feel like this would apply to this case as well, is, it seems here early on, nurses reported their concerns. And it was, you're being paranoid, don't worry about it type of thing. Hospitals, yes, they have their own, whatever their procedures are for, quote unquote, internal investigations, right? But even if something's uncovered, think of the detriment that information coming public would do. Because what is a hospital at the end of the day? It's a business. It is a multi-million-dollar business. And if your hospital is the one known as a doctor poisoning and killing patients, no one's going to go. No one's going to go. So even if, and I'm not throwing the hospital under the bus, but it makes a lot of sense that even if something was found, it would be under wraps. It would be minimized, because if that information got out, it would just wreck a multi-million-dollar business. And when you think about it, just very simply and without emotion, yeah, that makes sense. The hospital's a multi-million-dollar business. But when your first thought is, this is where I go if I'm sick, like if I need life and death care, this is where I go. But they don't want to out that information. So, and I found that very interesting. It was a podcast I had listened to about Harold Shipman. I can't remember the exact podcast. He's covered on so many, but the podcasters, when they said that, it was really worded way more eloquently than I'm stating right now. And it made so much sense the way they put that. And that applies to all angels of death or nurses of death, So not just for this case. Hi, Linda. Good to see you. All the Danny After Darkers. I love it. I was given medication I was allergic to and told them I was allergic to it in the ER. That's scary. That is scary. Let's see. You agree much is kept from the public? Absolutely. Absolutely. Hospitals and colleges like to pretend that they aren't businesses. Very well said, Capone. Very well said. I was at the hospital for my calf muscle hanging out of my leg. What, Corey? The nurse dropped my leg on the bed. Never saw that nurse again. I would imagine so. Holy shit. That is horrible. A hospital will protect their business by any means necessary, such as downplaying, but have private lawsuits as well in the hush hush. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, this is something that we're not going to hear about. So, yeah. How fucked up is it that hospitals are multi-million-dollar businesses? I know, but it's true. If you think about it, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. And just to give an example of, for those of you who follow me over on the Paul Manson Saga discussion panel, which we do a show tonight, so check that out. When we were in LA and my co-host was sick and we had to go to the hospital, the emergency room, again, he's from out of country, so he's in Canada. So to hear, it's just very different, when they're going insurance here and that. And it's like, well, no, they have universal health care for the most part. So it was very, to kind of hear the breakdown of what things would have been. It was like, what the hell? What the hell? Like, and then multiply that by how many patients that they see in a day, in a month, in a year. Yeah, hospitals are making big, big money. Let's see. Sorry to bring that up, Paul, but it was just the best example I could give on the fly. Let's see. Head doctors and or staff have legal teams on speed dial. Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. And think about it. When you go to the hospital, even if it's for like a simple thing, if you have to go to the emergency room, you always have to sign a waiver. You always have to sign a waiver. And then especially if you're going in for even the simplest of operations, you have to sign a waiver, which, makes sense to a point. But also at the end of the day, are there still lawsuits that happen? Yes. But it's just scary. It's very, very scary. I had a nurse, Danny After Dark fun facts. I had a nurse years ago. I forget what it was, why I needed the medication, but she put it in to my pharmacy. She was one letter off, and nobody caught it. The pharmacist didn't catch it. She told me the name of it and it sounded exact. It sounded, when I picked it up, I'm like, oh, that's exactly what she said, because the pronunciation was exactly the same, but it was one letter off. And I had really bad heart problems from that medication, had to go to the hospital. It was horrible. And then the doctor realized she made the mistake and was one letter off. And yeah, but that was scary. That was scary. So needless to say, turns out I was also allergic to that medication. And that's why I had the reaction that I did on top of that. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. But yeah, shit happens. And that was no malintent. That was just a simple error. And it was scary. Let's see. Everybody's obsessed with Corey's story right now. Corey, do you have pictures? I'm like very weird like that. Like I want to see. I'm not going to lie. Even in my profession, there were procedures I couldn't afford. I've gone to Argentina to have it done for. Manson Archives. Now I want to know what. You totally don't have to say, but I really want to know. Wait. What is this? I just jumped accident. Okay. Manson would know these things. I'm telling you I can imagine. Danny, is the picture of you, Beckham, and Paul on your wall new? Just noticing it. Well, thank you for being creepy and looking around my room, Corey. No, it is not new. That's been up there for several months. That is this picture of the three of us from Spawn Ranch when we went to, it's kind of a glare, when we went to LA. I love that picture. So I got it made into a canvas. So yeah, first I had it framed, and then I was like, oh, it's such a good picture. Then I got it blown up into a canvas. Yeah. Any excuse to put my photo on the wall. What can I say? But thank you. Thank you for noticing several months later. Let's see. Everyone goes down to Mexico for expensive procedures. Yeah, it's reality trash TV, so y'all don't come for me. But on the E network, there's a show called Botched with Dr. Dubrow and Dr. Nassif. Fun fact, I actually met Dr. Nassif. And sweet guy. But they cover botched surgeries, just like the name implies. And so much of it you hear of patients saying, it cost this much in the US, so I went to another country, or they had it done in the US and they didn't go to someone who was really qualified to do the surgery, and it totally fucked up their body. And it's just, because not every, you hear plastic surgeon, they always say there's certain specialties that they have, but people will still just do anything to make money. And hence why that show exists. I used to watch that back in the day. That's why I say that. Not going to lie. I know it's trash TV. Just an easier hint. Go by genetic names. Most doctors and practitioners use their brand name. Generic is much easier to remember. Interesting. And those ads you see for doctor lawyer teams are not up on the up and up. Think about it. I understand if someone's new starting their practice, but if they have a practice and they have to advertise on the radio and in the newspaper for patients, I kind of view it as, are they doing that well that, they have to put this much into advertising to get new patients? Shouldn't their work speak for themselves? I don't know. I almost got put on a jury for a medical malpractice lawsuit against local. You did not tell me this. Okay, clearly I know this one. That happened right after my boss at work had left and I couldn't commit several months of drugs. I have never been more disappointed in you. Damn. I had to have a cancerous tumor removed off my saliva gland. Oh my God, archives. That's horrible. I do mock juries for medical malpractice cases for lawyers and preparing cases. Capone, my God, we should have you up on here. The insight you could do. Oh, what a nice, it was a nice memory until Paul got sick and then the trip went to hell. But no, it was a good day at the ranch with everybody for sure. Chris, I've got patients that got to Argentina for plastic surgery too. Okay, I'm glad somebody else knows who Dr. Nassif is. He's actually taller than you would think. I got my picture taken when I met him. I legit, so obviously I'm in Massachusetts. His family still lives in Massachusetts. He grew up here. And I was at a random, it was like an hour away, like near the Cape-ish, random farmer's market. And I see this guy and I'm like, oh my God, that looks like Dr. Nassif from Botch. But what would he be doing here on it was like a Saturday morning. I'm like, there's no way. So I'm like pulling him up on Google, even though I watched the show and I'm like, no, that's definitely him, but this can't be right. And then I pull up his Twitter and he posted a picture from the day before, like on the plane, like, oh, visiting my family in Massachusetts, blah, blah, blah. So I went up to him and I was just like, Dr. Nassif? And like, yeah, he was so nice. He was so nice. Yeah, and I got my picture with him. And he's actually, I'm 5'7". He's a little bit taller than me. I thought the way he looks on the show, he looks like a short guy. I thought he'd be shorter than me, but he was a little bit taller. So nice. So nice. Let's see. If you go to another country, you have no recourse. Absolutely. And sadly, even in the United States, you don't always have recourse. That's the tragic thing. Richard, hello, hon. I wanted to put a huge Danny After Dark portrait in our dining room. The wife wasn't having it. Oh, Richard, get rid of the wife. I'm just kidding. Danny, you look cute tonight and kind of younger. Oh, Linda. Have I told you you're like my favorite person tonight? Definitely more than my friend Liz here, who gave up the trial that she could have sat on. But thank you, Linda. My cat, Lucky, wants to see your cats. The cats aren't allowed in the room during my show nights, like my official show nights. They'll be allowed on my chill nights. That's what I've determined. Okay. What's she saying? And it was a death, not just an inquiry. Something. Oh my God. All right. Yeah. So you're going to have to text me tomorrow morning and explain to me why you, yeah. So for those who don't know who this is, she did the collab with me on the Boston Marathon bombing show. So the Netflix review. So check that out. That is my girlfriend. Yeah. Oh, I've never been more disappointed in her. I watch all the brain dead TV shows. I have to say, when COVID hit, like most people, I think because there was nothing to do, watch TV and such. I've always been a reader. I dived into books so much more because if you think about it, you could still order from Amazon. So I was ordering. Oh my God. If I look back, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books. And could I have gone online and got them used for way cheaper? Absolutely. But I'm a book nerd. And yeah, I like them new and crisp. And like, I don't like the pages folded. When you buy them new, sometimes people mark up the pages. No. I can't do that. Can't do that. So yeah, I gave up basically almost all TV during COVID. And it's pretty much stayed like that for the most part. I'm just such an avid reader now, which is awesome. Right. Yep. Why Argentina? Closer to Mexico specialist. Okay, so you guys are, Manson Archives is saying a whole lot of good information that I can't speak to. Happy wife, happy life. Royce, you are spot on. I know, hun, you are spot on. Maybe Richard, instead of in the living room, should put it in, if he has like a finished basement or, an office in the basement, an office meaning like, where like, if he keeps any tools and so on and so forth, just hang up a Danny After Dark promo picture. There's other places in the house to put it. All right, Manson Archives, Chris, because the infection rates are very low in Argentina. That's something I look into in having surgery. Okay. Yeah, I have no expertise in this, Manson Archive, so this conversation's all you. I've had like 7 surgeries, 2 C-sections, both babies over 10 pounds. Oh, Linda, oh my God, you are superwoman and a half, my girl. Oh my God. God, I like chase around and hang out with my nephew for the afternoon for like 5 hours and I'm exhausted as hell. And then I hear this and I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't have it so bad just happening for the afternoon. Hi, Jinx. Good to see you, hun. I know, but that's why you're my friend. And likewise, that's what friends are for. Being like, hey, you disappoint me. Hey, well, you know what? You're a bitch. That's what friends are for. Obviously, I'm the bitch in the relationship, so let's call it like it is. Let's see. Manson makes that sense. I keep hearing about the serious infections during routine surgeries. My cousin, who was a nurse, died from an infection during a routine surgery. Oh my God, Royce, I'm so sorry to hear that, hun. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not an uncommon thing. And it's tragic because it's like those 1 in a million chances, but it happens. And it's just so beyond tragic when something simple just turns into a deadly situation. It's horrific. It's not just for the patient because they're what should have been a simple thing, now they're suffering even more. The family, friends, it's horrible. I'm so sorry, Royce. That is horrible. Yeah, Kane, absolutely. Yep. Manson Archives. Let me put it to you this way. You walk into a hospital in Argentina, it's like walking into a palace and very, very clean. Interesting. Yeah, I've not been to Argentina, so I can't even give any expertise or any comment on that. All right. Royce. Oh my gosh, I'm sure. I can't even imagine. Royce, that's why I always look into infection rates, not even for myself, but for patients too. It's something that's overlooked. Manson Archives, when you say you look into infection rates, is there like a certain like website organization that you look at to determine that? Just if you could, if you could just post it in the chat, not just for everybody. So even if they go back on replay and watch this, that's that would be some good information, because that sounds simple enough. Okay, look into this, but where would you begin to look for it? And if it's too much work, don't worry about it, hon. On another note, asking for a friend, any idea what Argentina charge? Royce, don't ever change, hun. What is it? Yeah. I'll get a call. I'll get a text after this saying, yeah, you are a bitch and that's why I love you. That's what that little kissy face is for. That's why she's doing that. All right. So before we wrap this up, any other questions, comments, thoughts on? I know. But if that wasn't the case, I was going to say, if you're single, put your Instagram handle, Facebook thing, where can people message you if that wasn't the case, hon? Just saying. Yes. Any other last minute questions, comments, thoughts on Michael Swango, the, one of the many, unfortunately, angels of death. So, and there are more that will be coming in the pipeline. These types of cases, I definitely want to purposefully spread out. It's easy to kind of research them all at once and kind of get them done because it's a pretty heavy topic. And when they're so similar, it's just you just kind of get into a groove of doing the research and the notes. But yeah, these types of cases, you have to spread them out because otherwise it's just a lot of paranoia. Because it's scary. It's scary when you think, again, you go to the doctors or the hospital and someone is there you presume that they're there to care for you, and that's not the case. So, well, thank you. Yeah, Manson Archives is pretty helpful. He's pretty knowledgeable. And leave it up to Bill to come in at the very end. Better late than never. All right, so Manson Archives says, healthcare is free, if that helps. Okay. Good to know. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me for this episode of Danny After Dark. I know it's one of those kind of more scary ones because it could happen anywhere. It really could, but don't get too scared, everybody. So I will figure out what night this week I'll be doing my true crime and chill. And as soon as I know, I'll make the event and put it up. Again, for those of you who follow me over on the podcast, Manson Saga discussion panel, we do have a live show tonight because Leslie Van Houten is released from jail. So we will be discussing that. And then I believe there will be another show this week over there on the podcast too. So busy week for YouTube for me, but that's all right. I love it all. So again, thank you everybody for joining me. And until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.